Deborah Butterfield is an American sculptor who specializes in horse art. She has been sculpting for 40 years and sees her first horses as self-portraits. One of the meanings behind her art has to do with gender. She explains how over the centuries, horses have been used to enable male domination. Throughout history, whoever had horses were more powerful than those who didn't. Horses were an advantage, just like guns and tanks were. Most images of horses have been powerful stallions rearing up with generals commanding from their back, or were ambitious symbols of the West. To counter this aggressive approach, Butterfield chose to sculpt mares instead. Her message with this was that of vulnerability. Horses are a prey animal, so they can sleep standing up. When they lie down to sleep, it's because they feel safe enough to. With her horses lying down and these being self-portraits, she thought of herself as the prey in the gallery, as a predator wolf critic stalked outside. This was the artist's way of saying that we need to make ourselves vulnerable and find strength in that. Not to be defensive, but to be resilient. And she is quoted as saying, "I wanted to do these big, beautiful mares that were as strong and as imposing as stallions, but capable of creation and nourishing life." She received most of her education in California and later in her career in Montana. Deborah Butterfield's work focuses on the spirit and form of the horse as an intelligent mare rather than a war horse that is usually illustrated in art. The name of the sculpture derives from the place the artist found the materials. It's called Cabin Creek, and I think the setting is the perfect spot for this sculpture to be displayed. As for the artist's background, Deborah Butterfield has loved horses since she was a child. She was born the 7th of May, 1949, the same day as the 75th running of the Kentucky Derby, and Ponder was the horse that won. While in college, she had a difficult time deciding between veterinary medicine and art. She ultimately chose to pursue art and ended up lecturing, becoming assistant professor, then adjunct professor. She splits her time between her studio in Hawaii and her ranch in Montana, where she lives with her husband. They keep horses there, and she is a serious dressage writer. Her knowledge of the horse's physiology has helped in her accuracy and gives a sensitivity to her sculptures. Her artworks range from a few feet tall to 9 feet tall. She has used materials such as mud, sticks and grass, to plaster and steel, and cast bronze. She had the opportunity to travel to Israel on a Guggenheim Fellowship, where she created horses made from scrap metal and other materials found in junkyards for a display called Jerusalem Horses in 1981 at the Israel Museum. As somebody else put it, the way she constructs the bodies of the animals reflects her deep concern for careless exploitation and ignorance of the animal world. Butterfield is an animal lover and through her art brings awareness to these magnificent creatures. She has said that she sees the horse as a metaphor for Mother Earth. They are what is and was wonderful about our Earth, what we haven't ruined yet. She believes her horse work keeps her honest and aiming to be the best version of herself. Butterfield's love for animals and her understanding of the environment really resonated with me. During the 60s, when the pop art style was in, she chose to experiment with a different style and subject matter, which were horses and organic materials. Her horses are graceful and calm. They symbolize freedom, kindness, fragility, and confidence. And this sculpture, called Moku, which is a bronze with a patina, is probably my favorite work of hers. This horse is called Billings. It was made in 1996 and the materials are found steel and it's welded. In the artist's own words, this is the project description. The first time I saw a horse, I don't think I could talk yet. It filled my eyes and my heart and spoke to me without language. I have tried to explain this, but words fail me. I hope that by standing next to my work, you can feel the calm I feel around horses, the power and order through your skin and in your belly. The horse has been my focus in artistic practice for more than 40 years. My conversation with horses has lasted just as long. Vicki Hearn in Animal Happiness states, "There are people who describe training as a process of discussing with animals the attributes of God, a discussion in which the human listens as much as she talks." I find the progressive training of a horse so similar to studio work. There are questions, struggles, repetition, and hopefully resolution and satisfaction. Hearn also said, "I never encountered a horse in whose soul there was no harmony to call on." I have used different materials in my work to invoke different states of being, both physical and mental. Steel, copper, lead, bronze, driftwood, hardwood, and burned wood. All have different character, strengths and weaknesses, and line quality. Finding my way with various materials in the studio is like dealing with different personalities. I love the variety and expressiveness of different materials and horses, and hope that my work transmits this joy. Butterfield looks at the variety of metals she uses as her palette, just like a painter would. She lays her materials out on the floor, arranges them, and welds them together. She started using metals when she and her husband bought an old farm in Montana, and while fixing a fence, she had the idea to repurpose the material. She explains that exposing the interior of the horse was an expression of the emotional state. With her bronze driftwood sculptures, she finds sticks and branches and then takes them to a shop to get cast, where molds are made and the original wood is burned out. It's then welded and patinaed to create the effect of wood. These replicas of branches she has worked so hard to find are in the mountains of Montana and in the forest near her Hawaii studio. She collects and stores the wood in a large greenhouse structure where she'll occasionally find deer hanging about. It can take about 9 months for a large horse to be completed, with 20 people working on it. The process is physically demanding and time-consuming. Using hardy materials allows her artwork to stand the test of time and be displayed outdoors. And I like that the sticks alone and the pieces of metal used to make the horses are imperfect, they're natural, and a bit rugged. But when they're put together the way they are, with such care and thoughtful precision, the result is elegant and beautiful. Butterfield emphasizes the use of line in her sculptures. Her works have been described as three-dimensional gesture drawings, and the result is both skeletal and muscular. I think that's a great way to visually describe her horses because they're not completely solid and there is an emphasis on the flow of lines. Depending on the type of line the branch creates will determine whether it'll be used as a hoof or part of the haunch. They can evoke different feelings or energies, so the branches are carefully selected. There is also a contrast of fragility and strength, naturalism and simulation to the horses. This piece is titled Three Sorrows. The project's materials were gathered from the tsunami debris that floated to the Pacific Northwest from Japan in the 2011 earthquake. It is a poignant piece. To Butterfield, the large blue plastic piece represents the ocean, while the other pieces on the floor stand as land masses. Originally, the washed-up materials were going to be recycled, but there were permitting problems, so they were going to the dump instead. Butterfield was put in contact with Waste Management, and they agreed that the materials should be used for an important project. It took several months just to acquire the materials. All the horses in this exhibit are standing, which I believe says something based on what Butterfield has previously said about standing horses versus horses lying down. It seems like these horses are on guard, feeling unsafe, and are poised to take flight. Here are my works cited, and this artwork on the left is called Fish Trap. When I first started researching Deborah Butterfield, I was amazed to find out that what seemed like wood sculptures were in fact made of bronze. She has said that when she started out making horses from natural materials, like sticks and mud, they were partly to reflect how much a horse is part of its environment, combining the figure and the ground. I love the organic nature of these sculptures and Butterfield's connection to horses. I really admire her work.